Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're going to be jumping into another session of Epic 7 Now today. Got another balance adjustment for you guys. So let's go ahead and take a look at the list of units that got buffed here, and if you want to jump to any particular unit, artifact, or effect in this case, do check out the timestamps linked down below or embedded in the YouTube bookmarks. Anyway, starting off here, we have Apocalypse Ravi, one of the queens of getting balance patches, right? Architect Laika as well, Zio and Ron. Cleve might be back in the game here. We have Zahhak, Schuri, and then Hasol. Perhaps a specialty change is on the line for Hasol here, which will be really cool. She's one of my favorite 3-stars in the game. We have an buff to mature sunglasses, as well as a change to the effect of the targeting debuff, right? So let's go ahead and check things out here, starting off with Apocalypse Ravi. Her War God's Might is actually going to change now. You're no longer going to get the free 30% critical hit chance. I don't know what's going on here. There we go. You're no longer going to get the free 30% critical hit chance, and instead, it's going to be replaced by a free 30% penetration resistance, and that's actually going to be pretty cool. Not only because, well, she then doesn't have to worry about defense penetration units against her, but you can also potentially build a really tanky Apocalypse Ravi to tank like Straze S3s, and that could be really cool, because I've already seen people in the past run 30k plus HP Apocalypse Ravis with like no speed, so that could be a viable build for her, right? It's pretty decent. It's something to consider. Now, the previous effect says at the moment of being attacked, she consumes 10 Fighting Spirit and then increases combat readiness. Now it is after being attacked, she consumes 10 Fighting Spirit and increases combat readiness. I don't think there's a real major change to this, essentially, in how it works, necessarily. I guess it could come into play where if you're attacked and you cleanse after being attacked, right? If you have some sort of effect that allows you to cleanse after being attacked, then you will still get this Fighting Spirit consumption and combat readiness gain. Whereas here, if you had like restrict on you, I guess, and you were trying to cleanse it at the moment you were attacked, you didn't cleanse it, therefore, I don't know. Maybe it's a small mechanical thing, but in the end, I don't think it's gonna matter in like 95% of games that you're gonna play with her. What we have here, though, is Deliverance with her Soul Exchange, and there's a big change with this one. Before, it was the damage dealt by the skill increases every time somebody dies, and it can stack up to 3 times, right? This is her skill 3, and Apocalypse Ravi was really good in longer games in the past, where you would, you know, finish off some opponents, like hit them back and forth as a bruiser v bruiser matchup, and then after like 2 to 3 units have fallen, it could be your teammates, could be your opponent's units, then you would rip an S3 and you would hit like a truck, you revive somebody, all good. Now, what happens is when an ally dies, it has to be your ally though, that's kind of the downside here, you do grant War God to the caster, and it resets the cooldown of her S3, so that's actually really cool. Just the condition is when an ally dies, not when an opponent's unit also dies, right? So kind of like Blood Moon Haste, if your ally goes down, you get a huge buff for yourself. So War God actually increases defense penetration of her S3 by 50%, and it's the spell after the effect activates. So that's actually really cool. It does essentially let you reset the S3, allow you to S3 again, but with defense penetration, and if you do, you get to revive a random dead ally with 30% health, increase their combat readiness by 100%, and they get skill nullifier, so that still doesn't change. This makes her kind of scary, but do keep in mind that defense penetration resistance is still a thing. Even though she has it built into her kit, doesn't mean that other people can't run it. Empyrean Ilanov still exists, for example, and Empyrean Ilanov, honestly, is a really bad matchup for Ravi, just because Ilanov can injury down Ravi, and Ravi still really relies on having her HP stat. So I'd say, yeah, Ravi's main issue was against injury units. There's still really nothing except ML Rose that can like potentially counter that. And she was really susceptible to debuffs, right? I don't think penetration was necessarily her main weakness, but it is good to see that she is resilient, and she has other applications too, right? Like tanking Straze hits, for example, for your team. One thing that is major, though, is her imprint concentration is going from effect resistance to critical hit chance. So even though you're losing that 30% free crit, you're essentially getting 17 up to 17% crit here if you have the imprints on her, which is not bad. It just does make her a little bit more difficult to build, because before a 30% free crit chance, that's 6 max rolls of crit chance, right? 6 rolls of 5%, which is super hard to beat in terms of value. We'll see how this changes Apocalypse Ravi builds, though, moving forward. Not really sure, but I'm assuming she's still going to be built more or less the same. Okay, moving on, we have Architect Laika. Her biggest flaw was that she increased combat readiness of herself, and it kind of sucks because people can cut you, whereas units who take an extra turn, they can't cut you, right? Because you would take the extra turn and you have priority over them. But in this case here, her S1 just deals extra damage proportional to the caster's speed, which is nice to see. It's just extra damage whenever she doesn't have her burst for her S3 up. And her S2 now, with this target debuff, right? You dispel 2 buffs from the enemy and inflict target for 2 turns. Remember, target is getting buffed. We're going to talk about that. You will also end up granting attack and immunity to yourself for 2 turns. The immunity is kind of nice, actually, just so that you can't get, provoked by a Fire Lilius or some random shenanigans. A lot of units now have the ability to grant themselves immunity when like setting up a buff or a debuff before going for a nuking skill, right? So, for example, ML Kawazu also in the past was able to get controlled whenever he popped off his passive, so then they gave him the ability to get immunity, and now he can't be controlled, and then you just skill 3 and you nuke everybody, right? So it's kind of cool. So Laika's just getting that treatment here, which is nice. It's like future-proofing as well, which is good, even if it's not directly useful at the moment. And that says, after using the skill, when the enemy is inflicted with target, grants an extra turn to the caster instead of gaining 50% combat readiness, right? So before you gain 50% combat readiness, but if the opponent resists your target debuff, if they didn't have target, you wouldn't get the extra 50%. It was such a scam, but now she's so much more consistent and definitely gonna be back in the spotlight, which I don't like because I hate fighting her. She is awful to fight against. It used to be like a Straze Laika combo that they pick. If you're playing slow, they'll pick Straze and Laika, and you had to ban one and fight the other, and essentially you're always losing one unit whenever that happened, right? So we might see that come back again, who knows? But the good thing with Laika here is when you attack here, your buffs were from your S2, right? So now when you attack, she actually just gets an extinction, right, onto her kit, which is really nice. This actually is really good against, the Genesis Razes, the May Chloe's, Ruels, all the reviving meta that's going on right now, Spirit Eye Celine. So this is nice to see that they're adding more extinction units, especially for the harder hitting, kind of squishier DPSs. I know we have extinction with things like Little Queen Charlotte, for example, but you can build her as like kind of a bruiser and such. So it's good to see that they're spreading the love of extinction around. Definitely in this revive meta, we need more extinction units. And yeah, not too bad. I think Architect Laika is going to see some use, especially in faster teams, especially in those team compositions. Sorry about that. Don't know what happened there. But especially in those team compositions, right, where you're playing more aggressively. Speaking of playing aggressively, let's take a look at Zio's changes, because he has a really minor but really impactful one. Now, instead of starting the battle by increasing his combat readiness by 20%, it's going to be a 30% increase. So you remember how I kept getting my Zios outsped, right? My 260 speed Zio was not fast enough. We have like 320 plus speed Amids and Rinox and all these other ridiculous units that are out there right now. Yeah, so it's a speed power creep. As the years go on, people are going to get more speed rolls in general, and then their overall quality of speed gear goes up. Zio was basically unable to do his job unless you slap like really good speed gear on him as well. So this actually just makes it so Zio can still guarantee that he takes first turn, which is great to see until you realize that cleavers and people can also use this against you. So if you're trying to use him as an anti-cleave unit, good luck with that. You're going to fight for the draft when it comes to him here. But hey, at least he's going to be draftable yet again for slower players. The S3, here's the main change. I really don't like this change. His soul burn is changed from 10 souls to dispel all buffs from the target instead of just the 2. Now it's going to be ignoring effect resistance. He's already a mage, he can already hold book. And the main problem with this that I have is if he guarantees first turn, you can't contest him at all. Now he gets to ignore resist soul burn. So he's gonna soul burn his S3 into you and then proc ML Teiyu, proc any other unit that he really wants to come bridge afterwards. I think it's making it a little bit too easy. I think Zio's already been super strong and I don't think this was necessary, but hey, I guess they just really want, you know, to give Cleave a bit more consistency when it comes to Zio cleaves. I don't know. I'm not sure. I liked having the effect resistance units when I'm fighting Zio, because then I know I can't get debuffed, right? It's like a security measure, but this, it feels cheap. Every time I see a ignore resistance soul burn on stuff like this, where it's kind of not super important to have, it feels bad. I'm not a huge fan of this. I can see why people like it. We'll see how it works in practice. You can technically use this against Amids and stuff. You don't have to build effectiveness on Zio anymore, really. So we'll see if this changes people's builds or anything. Who knows? But moving on here, we have Ron. Speaking of cleave and fast units, the fastest base speed unit in the game here, Ron, tied with Kayron and Renok for 129 base speed. He will now grant skill nullifier to himself, right? Instead of on the S3, it's going to be on the S2, right? They changed this around. See, they got rid of it here, and now it's on the skill 2. So he still gives immunity to everybody, which is really nice, but the main change here is for his skill 3. So his upgraded skill 3, now, instead of inflicting stigma for 2 turns, which halves their combat readiness gains and halves their healing that they can get, now they gave him frostbite and restrict for 2 turns, which is absolutely incredible. Restrict is just a better version of Stigma. Stigma halves healing, but you're not really caring about your opponent healing necessarily in PvP. It's not too common, especially on your turn, right? But the restrict here is basically, instead of cutting the combat readiness gains in half, you can guarantee that your opponents can't gain combat readiness at all. And then when it comes to Frostbite, Frostbite, if you don't know, Lethe and I believe the specially changed Shepherd Jenna, right, I think, has it as well. It basically allows you to ignore damage sharing effects. So this is Smilegate's attempt at making a unit essentially counter Lady of the Scales, right? Lady of the Scales is everywhere, and even if you don't have the most insane speed gear for PvP and RTA, you at least have fast enough units that you can outspeed a Lady of the Scales, and you can stop her from cutting as well, because if you soul burn this and you ignore resistance, you're going to apply the Frostbite and the Restrict for 2 turns and have a, 85% chance to decrease defense for 2 turns, which is great. But this is going to be really nice. The Lady of the Scales can't cut and cleanse the debuffs, and then you have Frostbite, which allows you to basically nullify Lady of the Scales, this unique buff that allows the frontline unit to share 70% of the damage, right, with themselves. This is huge. This is really big. And I'm definitely going to be building a Ron now, moving forward. Even if I'm not a cleaver, he's going to be a really decent pick. Just got to keep in mind that now Zio's gotten buffed, so even the fastest Rons will probably struggle against Zio picks. So this is definitely going to change up the meta and how people draft for sure. Expect a lot more aggressive teams to potentially come out, and expect Bellion to get even more value in terms of blocking soul burns. For his imprint concentration, it went from attack, which was kind of useless in my opinion, over to critical hit chance, which will make him a bit more consistent, a bit easier to build if you're going for a DPS Ron. I guess the attack would have been better if you weren't building crit rate anyway. But a lot of cleavers would want a DPS Ron anyway to set up for extra damage, right? Because he does hit quite hard. So this is a good change overall in my opinion. But now let's move on to Zahhak, who got a bit of a change here, right? Not a lot, but it's pretty significant. You can tell that they really want to counter Lady of the Scales and Setsuka. They tried countering Setsuka with the release of Saria, or supposedly that's what they were doing, right? According to the player base. But here, I think, is the actual changes that will matter. Zahhak now no longer will increase the critical hit chance by 50% when attacking here. He is going to increase critical hit chance and his hit chance by 50% when he's attacking. So, yeah, the difference is critical hit chance is the chance that you have to make a crit. You just have to build Zahhak with 50% crit rate, basically, because he's going to gain the 50% when he attacks with this. And he will also now have a 50% chance to hit the opponent with his skill 1, which is really good, right? If you're fighting an evasion unit, typically they only have 50% innate evasion. The extra 20% and stuff are usually added on with artifacts, but Zahhak can run those types of artifacts too, like Symbol of Unity, which allows him to gain 20% extra hit chance. So he can have up to 70% hit chance, making him really consistent against evasion units, right? And now he also has Elaborate Plan, which is his S2. It dispels 2 debuffs from an ally before increasing combat readiness by 30% now. It used to dispel 2 debuffs from an ally and a caster. Now he is losing the ability to cleanse himself, right? But keep in mind, you are building him relatively fast, and you shouldn't really be getting debuffed before he goes. You're going to be setting up against evasion teams, which are typically slower, right? Think of Remnant Violets, usually pretty slow relative to other units. New Kid Aiden, relatively slow. Fire Flan, relatively slow. Fighting Setsuka, relatively slow. So Zahhak is pretty safe in those. If you're not using him in RTA and you're using him in Guild Wars and Arena, I think this is good enough, right? The 30% push is really nice for bridging, right? He's going fast, he's going to push somebody else up so they can clean up after him. And then he also grants increased attack and increased hit chance to the caster for 3 turns. This is the main thing here. With him attacking, he normally already gains hit chance, but now he gets this hit chance buff, and that will increase his hit chance further, another 50%. So essentially, the 50% here covers his elemental disadvantage, right? He's an earth. If he's fighting Setsuka, who's fire, this will cancel out his disadvantage. So instead of a 100% chance to miss, he has a 50% chance to miss, but now with his increased hit chance buff, he has a 100% chance to hit, and that will cancel out the 100% evasion that Setsuka would have had. So this is huge, right? This essentially allows him to nuke whoever he wants that has evasion, and he also grants an extra turn here. The great thing about Zahhak is his multipliers are amazing, and he already hits like an absolute truck, so this is only just going to make him more effective at countering evasion units, which is really cool to see. I kind of wish though that he granted this increased hit chance buff to an ally as well. But hey, it would have been cool to see Briarwitch Assyria get 100% hit chance too. That's all I'm saying. I'm just throwing that out there. But anyway, Zahhak probably going to see some use, honestly. If not in RTA, then definitely Arena and Guild Wars. He does get an exclusive equipment change as well because of this. So instead of increasing the attack of the target and the caster for 2 turns when he uses it S2, now it just increases damage dealt of vulnerability exposed by 10%, right? So yeah, we'll see what Zahhak's new ideal EE is going to be, but it's going to require a little bit of testing, right? We'll see his damage multipliers and all that stuff with this this change here with this EE. All right, anyway, moving on here, we got another minor buff in the form of Schuri this time. I actually use Schuri in my PvE teams, so this is cool. He's also a speed imprint, a 14 speed imprint, and we also just got buffs to Ron and Zio, so Schuri might actually see a bit of PvP play moving forward. He has his damage increased proportional to target's max health. That's really good. Think about like Daydream Joker hitting pretty hard with high HP units. Yeah, this is going to make him pretty effective, right, against high HP units, tanky units. And a critical hit will double the amount of focus gained. Normally he gains 1, he'll gain 2 this way. And then it says, at the start of the first battle, gains 3 focus. So what do you know? If he crits here with his S1, then you're going to get 5 focus immediately, right? And keep in mind, he also increases combat readiness by 25% every time he crits. It's ridiculous. It's a huge push. 25% combat readiness push is almost unheard of, right? In terms of skill effects, especially just with a basic skill S1. But then he'll be able to trigger this rifle shot. Now, normally his rifle shot is when you have full stacks or 3 or more focus, you change it to a full burst, right? Now, what he does is he'll attack everybody, it's an AoE still, and decreases combat readiness by 30% against your opponents. And when the focus is full, he'll consume all of it, he'll increase the damage down, and ignores effect resistance. That is pretty cool. Now, the main thing is you can't really open with this unless you're using Freerin. You can't open with this, right? You will open with 3 focus, and you're going to use your 1 focus here on the S1. It'll double it, become 5 focus. On your second turn with Schuri, you can S3. You can decrease their combat readiness gains by 30%. Or sorry, not gains, but you literally push them back by 30%. And when your focus is full, at that point it should be, you'll ignore resistance as well, so they can't stop you from pushing them back. So Schuri is actually going to be a pretty viable choice, I think, for RTA, and I like this change. He's also still going to be really good in PvE. I use him in my expedition teams, and he works fantastic, right? So it's a nice change to see. Okay, next up we have Hasol. Hasol is a great 3-star in terms of design. I like her, and I'm hoping she gets a specialty change. Hopefully this is, you know, the one specialty change we get every year nowadays, right? So yeah, that'd be kind of cool. The amount that she recovers is increased here, which is decent, right? Healing for a tank is always nice to sustain themselves, so that's not bad. But then we go to her Blade of Vengeance. So this is her passive, right? When an ally suffers a counterattack, you gain 25% damage reduction. The only problem with this is that it doesn't include dual attacks and extra attacks, and if it did, should be so much better. But after an enemy specifically counterattacks, you increase combat readiness by 25%, and you increase additional damage of Swift Cut and Punishing Strike by 1500. An additional damage increase effect can stack up to 5 times now instead of 4. So what used to happen is when your opponent counters you, right, you can you'll stack up this fixed damage. So Hasol's S1 here would deal 500 fixed damage. If they countered you, you would deal 1,500 before. Now you would deal 2,000. So it's going to stack up faster. Stacking up 5 times is kind of crazy. That's 7,500 fixed damage that you can stack up if your opponent counters 5 times. Keep in mind, Setsuka is a unit that always counters if you miss against your opponents. So this is a way to punish your opponent, and fixed damage is really good against evasion too, by the way. So keep that in mind. This is another Setsuka counter, technically. Not only are you reducing the damage Setsuka does, but now you're cycling your Hasol, you're getting more stacks, and you're dealing more damage, right? And she's recovering more to compensate for that as well. That is huge. And I'm definitely going to be building Hasol up to see if I can use her against Setsuka. You guys know that I'm going to be doing that. So be sure you're subscribed if you're not, if you want to see that in action, right? And also leave a like on the video if you've been enjoying this coverage of our news and you want to see more. Anyway, we're not done with Hasol here because she has a Punishing Strike. Her skill 3 attacks everybody. It's an AoE, and it inflicts 500 additional damage regardless of what the attack hits, right? But now, again, you can stack up to 7,500 more damage. That's 8,000 fixed damage here. It's gonna be kind of crazy. The only thing that's changed is that right now she doesn't get a barrier anymore, and the barrier used to scale with her max health. Now instead, she grants immunity to herself for 3 turns, which is pretty good. Everyone gets a defense buff, and the immunity is actually nice because then you can't get like debuffed and stuff on her. You definitely want to be able to hit if possible, right, with her. It just helps out in the long run. Immunity is not bad, just, yeah, not bad. She doesn't cleanse herself though, keep that in mind, but the immunity will prevent further debuffs, which means you technically don't need to build her with a ton of resistance now. It used to be that you had to build her with some. I guess you can forego that if you already built her with immunity set, and then she has 3s and you get another 3 turns of immunity. You're going to be pretty good to go. Okay, anyway, the other thing is, keep in mind, when she suffers a counterattack, this is the original skill. It decreases skill cooldowns by 1 turn. So if you keep getting countered by hitting Setsuka and stuff, you can just keep ripping S3s, and it will deal a lot of damage that stacks up over time. So Hasol, pretty cool. But again, hopefully she gets a specialty change to help her terrible base stats. Like, she's just really squishy compared to other knights, and maybe give her some cool passive skills built into her kit. That'd be kind of nice to see. Alright, last 2 things, guys. Mature Sunglasses getting a little bit of a buff here, and all it is increasing the damage reduction effect from 7 to 14% to 10 to 20%. If you have a plus 15 one, it's just going to be 15% damage reduction. It's going to be the halfway point between these 2 values, which is not bad, honestly. All sources of damage, not just crits and stuff, all sources. So fixed damage, normal, like non-crits, crit damage, all that stuff is going to be reduced here. And it's decent, right? Because you're also getting extra crit hit damage from it as well. So I like it. I use it personally on like Brig, for example, because I use him to tank in PvE, but also he needs to deal extra damage, so the crit damage helps. Okay, so the last thing we have is also another major middle finger to Setsuka and other evasion units. So the target debuff now, right? Keep in mind, Architect Laika inflicts a target debuff as well, so pretty pretty good. This used to just increase damage suffered by 15% and decrease evasion by 15%. The 15% decrease evasion was honestly a joke because it doesn't even cancel out the artifacts of like Moonlight Dreamblade and stuff that give 20% evasion. But now, finally, it's going to decrease evasion by 50%. Forget this on like Architect Laika, but just keep in mind that this debuff, this target debuff, there are other units that have it as well. I know people have been using like Wanda to counter, especially change Wanda to counter like Setsukas and stuff. It's pretty funny. Wanda's really good, by the way, just not so much in RTA. And Wanda also inflicts target debuff on opponents too, so that with 100% hit chance on her skills makes her pretty good against evasion in general. But yeah, this is definitely going to be a huge buff to any unit that has target debuffs. And also keep in mind that Rangers have Song of the Stars, which allow them to inflict a target debuff 100% of the time, which is really good. Anyway, that is going to be it for the balance adjustment preview. I think every single unit being buffed here has a viable reason to be buffed. I don't think anything here is filler content, right? And I like to see that. I like to see very targeted, very intentional buffs, and I like to see them addressing some of the people's concerns with the meta being too stale, right? Every single match nowadays has Lady of the Scales. Every single match nowadays has Setsuka. So it is good to see that they're trying to switch things up. But anyway, guys, with that being said, let me know in the comments section down below who got your favorite buff here and who can you not wait to use. I know personally for me, I'm definitely going to be building up Apocalypse Ravi, but I might need to whip out some of the better gears for Ron as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.